Dear viewer, how much money would you give to read the truth about the people around you? To understand their deepest and darkest desires or troubled and painful past? What would you do with these powers? Would you help save these people from their dark histories, or would you exploit your powers for your own greater good? Well, quite frankly though, I don't really care about these things, or what you do. I just want to see what happens when someone gains this sort of sixth sense and study them. 4,670 for a little bit of your time, your mind, and your sanity. I attached some details about the procedure you're going to be going through if you accept this deal. I hope to hear back from you soon.
Welcome back to a long-awaited ItsDang video. It's Analytical here, and today we're going to be talking about one of the biggest cult classic manga that has ever released, named Homunculus by Hideo Yamamoto. Some spoilers, of course. The story of Homunculus follows our main character, Nakoshi Susumu, a homeless 34-year-old man living inside his car between two familiar worlds. One was the most expensive hotel in the city he used to frequent in the past, and the other was the park across the street, housing the homeless residents and where he himself resides for most of his days. One day, however, his car is towed away by the city with a hefty fine attached to reclaim his car. Nakoshi, desperate for money, is approached by a young man looking to run an odd medical experiment, or should I say, procedure, for 700,000 yen, or roughly 4,600 USD. This medical procedure, trepanation, which is real by the way, involves drilling holes in one's skull and the purpose of possibly unlocking the sixth sense, and of course relieving possible pressure on the skull. With Nakoshi having little to no choice, he takes the offer and goes under the knife. After the procedure, there seem to be no immediate effects on Nakoshi's mind. Later on in the day, however, after scrapping with the Yakuza, Nakoshi discovers that he can see a person's true self in the image of a grotesque monster with the left side of his body, or in other words, he can see homunculi. Homunculus, as you could probably tell from that story synopsis, is a psychological story with some elements of mystery. The premise of the story actually revolves around the many traumas that some of our side characters experience as we follow the story of Nakoshi Susumu, a less than tasteful and pathological liar, as our hero or protagonist. I think the best way to describe the story and at least the manga structure in some sense is if Mushishi and Mononoke was a lot more fucked up and had actual plot progression. Like, the story at its very basis is incredibly simple. You follow a dude, he goes around meeting people, and he solves their issues. But for a manga like Homunculus, where it focuses on the human condition or what it means to be human, it's the characters that make the story rather than the story that makes the characters. And of course, Homunculus falls right into this category. That's also why the story section was kind of small. First off, the protagonist of Homunculus, Nakoshi Susumu, is probably one of the most fascinating characters I think I've ever read in manga. Nakoshi Susumu can only be described as a man that is truly flawed and broken, and a walking contradiction, down to how he lives, his mannerisms, and even his own personal ideologies and goals. Nakoshi lives as a homeless man, yet refuses to integrate himself into that lifestyle and the others that are living that lifestyle. He's shown to be very self-centered and narcissistic, yet actively attempts to help others with their trauma and even sympathizes with them. And most importantly, seeing how it's one of the core aspects of the plot itself, Nakoshi is a pathological liar, yet actively seeks to find the truth of what it means to be himself, or in other words, what it means to be human. This multi-layered personality of Nakoshi Susumu creates this very interesting effect on the audience where the interpretation of the story can change based on the reader. This will make a lot more sense when you start reading it and the true nature of the homunculi and Nakoshi's backstory becomes more fleshed out. You know, because Nakoshi is a massive liar, it kind of forces the audience to really use their brain, read between the lines, and sort of create meaning through context clues in the story. For example, you can interpret the story as a tragic redemption story about a man trying to understand what it means to be himself while slowly succumbing to his actual procedure and losing his mind. Or my personal favorite interpretation of Homunculus being a tale of ego and narcissism, and how a man in pursuit of what it means to be human actually destroys the very essence of the thing he's looking for. We're not even talking about like the specific meanings behind some mannerisms of Nakoshi and some specific scenes in the manga, which can even go deeper than what we've explored thus far. Like why Nakoshi sleeps in like the fetal position, which I personally have my own interpretations of it, but it's gonna get way too long for this video, to be honest. Other than Nakoshi, our protagonist, the side characters of the story of Homunculus actually play a pretty big role in the overall plot progression. Their stories sort of intertwine together and are directly correlated with Nakoshi's character development and character arc. Like, you know, when Nakoshi literally carries pieces of their homunculi with himself, among other things, of course. The most important side character, Manabu, add a brand new dynamic to the Homunculus plot. He sort of acts like a voice of reason within the chaotic landscape of what remained of Nakoshi's psyche. In other words, he's like you and me if we were in the story and watching Nakoshi fall apart. And I think the best example of this, and personally one of my favorite parts of the Homunculus story, is when Nakoshi and Manabu have like their own little back and forth during Manabu's own personal character arc. Now, when looking at Homunculus in an artistic standpoint, the art of the story actually matches the themes of the story itself very well. The art, compared to other traditional anime and manga art styles, takes a very realistic approach to its art. For example, the characters display features that are very proportionate to regular human beings and display a lot of detail that you wouldn't expect from your traditional manga art style. And this makes a lot of sense, obviously, since the manga covers the human condition and various relatable and realistic aspects of human life, making this grounded art style pretty good for the tone of the story overall. Now, in the end, is Homunculus a worthwhile read? Of course, but is Homunculus a manga you suggest to your regular manga fan just offhandedly? Not really. You definitely need to be in a very specific headspace to read this, since it covers like some very disturbing and kind of sad themes at some points. And honestly, it's just not an easy read for just your average reader. It's not like Rising of the Shield Hero or something when you just pick off the shelf and read then and there. But if you generally like the psychological stuff, or you're a massive manga elitist, then of course, pick it up, be my guest, it's a great manga. Alright, with that being said, thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe. I know for all the people that are subbed to my channel, this has been a long time coming, but if you can tell from the bags under my eyes, I went through a hell month of uni this month. I repeated myself, but hey, it is what it is. And I'm glad that I can finally get this video out. More content coming soon, since, of course, exam week is basically over at this point. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.